Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis. And in Yirtzeh Hashem today we will complete Daf Samach Beis, Amid Beis. And let's see if we could get a little bit further. Hopefully we could get at least onto Samach Gimel Amid Aleph. So we are continuing to learn Hilchos B'Tzias HaPas. Yesterday we began Siman Kuf Samach Zayin. And today we pick up on Samach Beis, Amid Beis, 4 lines down from the top of Samach Beis, Amid Beis, right by the beginning of the words of the Ramah, right by the Hagah. So before we go into the words of the Ramah, let's remind ourselves of a halacha that the Mechaber told us about yesterday. So the Mechaber was describing, after we've watched Al Natilas Yadayim, and now we're ready for the Suda, so we're going to take our bread, we're going to take our loaf of bread, or our challah, or if it's Shabbos, we're going to take Lechem Mishnah, but I don't really want to get into Lechem Mishnah right now because we're going to see that the Ramah is going to address Shabbos. So let's imagine right now we're sitting down to the Suda and we have a loaf of bread, a closed loaf, not a sliced loaf. Or we have a challah, but it's during the week, so we have one challah. We have a whole challah. The Mechaber was describing to us the proper way to go about making the Brachah and cutting the challah. And what did the Mechaber say? The Mechaber told us that really what you should do is, you should take the knife that you're going to use to slice the challah, and you should slice a little bit into the challah where you intend to make the cut to slice off the piece that you're going to eat after you make the Berachas HaMotzi. So you take the knife, you cut into the challah a little bit, then you make the Brachah of HaMotzi, then you finish cutting off the piece, and then you eat the piece. Why? Why are we supposed to do it this way? So what we saw yesterday was we're trying to balance several different requirements. One is that l'chvoid the Brachah, we want the Brachah to go onto a sholem. A sholem, a whole loaf, a whole challah, is definitely more chashuv than a slice of bread or a cut challah. So we want the bracha to go on a sholem. That's one requirement. But then we have another requirement, and that is we're making a bracha, hamoitzi lechem in haaretz, and we need to cut off the piece, and then we need to eat the piece. We want to be mimayit, we want to minimize the hefsek between the bracha and the eating of the bread. Once you make the bracha, motzi lechem min haaretz, we want you to eat the bread ASAP. We want you to eat the bread as soon as possible. So we don't like the picture of make the bracha, motzi lechem min haaretz, and only then take the knife and cut off the slice that you're going to eat. That is a longer hefsek. It's a greater interruption between the bracha and the eating of the bread than we really need. So what do we want you to do in order to balance out the different requirements? What we're going to tell you to do is take the knife and start to cut the slice. Now, don't cut it off all the way, because if you cut it off all the way, you're no longer making a bracha on a sholem. How much should you cut into the loaf? You should cut into the loaf until the point at which we want that if you pick up the loaf by the small piece, by the piece that you're cutting off, if you pick up the loaf by that piece, it should be able to raise up the whole loaf without breaking off. If you cut it to that extent, it's still considered attached. So it's still considered that you're making the bracha on a sholem. At the same time, you already cut, let's say, 25% of the cut. So you minimized the hefsek by 25%. Instead of having to do 100% of the cut before you could cut off the piece and eat the bread, now you only have to do 75% of the cut. You already did 25% before you uttered the bracha. So what we're doing is we're starting the cut so as to minimize the hefsek caused by the cut, but we're not cutting it so much that the loaf should no longer be considered a shalem, so the bracha is going on the shalem. That's what we learned yesterday. Okay, now, if we turn to Samach Beis Amud Beis, and we go 4 lines down, there's one other halacha that I have to mention from what we learned yesterday. And that is, we said that when it comes to the piece that you're going to cut off, how big should it be? How large a slice should you slice off? So the Mechaber told us, don't cut off a piece that's very small, because then you look stingy. You just made a bracha hamaitzi lechem in a aretz. We don't want you to look like you're just cutting off a miserly little piece. We want it to be that you're eating baravchus. So cut off a nice piece. At the same time, don't cut off a piece that's bigger than a kibetza, the volume of an egg, because then you look like a glutton. Then you look like Rav Sanusa. So what should you do? You should cut off a piece that's about a kazayas. Don't cut less than a kazayas, then you look miserly. A kazayas, or a little bit more than a kazayas you could do, between a kazayas and a kibetza. That's what you should cut off. Now let's go to the Ramah. So the first thing that the Ramah tells us here is that this halacha, that you should cut into the challah, you should cut into the loaf before you make the bracha, says the Ramah, it does not apply on Shabbos. Says the Ramah Hagah, Ub'Shabbos lo yachtorich b'kikar ad achar bracha. On Shabbos, do not cut into the challah from the Lechem Mishnah until after you complete the bracha of Hamotzi. Why? Kedei sheyiu hakikaros shleimos, because we know that on Shabbos you need Lechem Mishnah. So on Shabbos we definitely need the chalas to remain shalom. We must, on Shabbos, we must have them shalom. During the week, it's a milo l'chvayt bracha that they should be shleimim. But on Shabbos, we have a new halacha of Lechem Mishnah. On Shabbos, we need them to remain shleimim. So therefore, says the Ramah, on Shabbos, he brings down for the Mordechai, do not cut into the challah before you make the bracha on Shabbos. But, continues the Ramah, he says, and we come okay, nevertheless, im shachach v'chatach k'may b'chayil, if you forgot this halacha, and you did cut into the challah before making the bracha on Shabbos, the same way you do it during the week, einay mazik, it doesn't damage anything, it doesn't cause harm. In other words, it's okay. You can still go forward with your Lechem Mishnah. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. We said why Shabbos is different than the rest of the week. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. It says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting yud. Ube Shabbos, v'hu adin b'yomtiv. The same halacha applies on Yom Tov. On Shabbos and on Yom Tov both, but when you go to make the Hamotzi on the Lechem Mishnah, do not cut into the challah before you make the Hamotzi. Why? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Mipnei shetzarich levarech halechem Mishnah, because on Shabbos and Yom Tov we have a special halacha that we have to make Hamotzi on Lechem Mishnah, and Chayshinon we are concerned Shema tishaver kula kaidam habracha. If we're going to allow you to slice into the challah, into the Lechem Mishnah before you make the bracha, you might inadvertently break the challah and it won't be a shalom, and now you're going to have a problem. I'll call upon him, or at the very least, even if we're not worried that you might mamish cut through the challah, shema yachter kol kach ba'omek, but maybe you will cut so deep into the challah that if you pick up the small end of the cut loaf, lo yala kikarimai, the rest of the loaf will not come up with it, the small piece will break off. And then it will be like we said yesterday, ve'avi kiparos lagamri, and then it's already at the point that we consider it physically separated. Va'anav lechem mishnah b'inan, and this is no good because we need lechem mishnah. V'alkein, and therefore says to Mishnah Berurah, this is where the Ramah is coming from. V'alkein tov yosef shlo yachtor klal. Therefore says the Ramah, on Shabbos, don't cut into the challah before you make the bracha at all. So during the week, we want you to cut into the challah before you make the bracha, so as to minimize the hefsek between the brachas hamotzi and the eating of the challah. On Shabbos, we don't want you to do it. We would prefer that you have a longer hefsek between the bracha and the eating of the challah, and not risk damaging the challah to the extent that you do not have lechem mishnah. Now, and the Mishnah Berurah says this. He says, "Va'afta al yidei zeh." even though by doing this, even though now we're not going to minimize the hefsek, and you're going to have a more significant hefsek between the bracha and the eating, lo yachashiv hefsek. The bottom line is that the cutting off of the slice of bread is not really called a hefsek. We've learned many times already, if you're dealing with something that's tzarech achila, we don't really call it a hefsek. So it's not really a hefsek, slicing off the piece of bread. It's just that during the week, we go the extra mile to minimize any hefsek. So on Shabbos, we would rather that you don't go minimize this hefsek, which is really not a hefsek anyway, and risk ruining the Lechem Mishnah. Now, when you finish learning Mishnah Berurah Ois Kat Yud here, you come to the conclusion that on Shabbos, you should not cut into the Lechem Mishnah at all before you make the Hamotzi. Yet, we are all very, very, very familiar with the idea that virtually everybody, when they go to make the bracha on the Lechem Mishnah on Shabbos, right, what do? They take their challah knife and they take the challah, right? Here's my trusty fake challah over here, and they go like this, they go like that, and then they go Brachah Baruch. Now, again, when you learn Ois Kat Yud over here, it sounds like that's mamish not negaya. It sounds like there's no reason to do it all. The answer is, and we can see this in a Dirshu footnote number 4. They bring down over here from Hilchos Shabbos, from the Mishnah Berurah in Siman Reishai and Dalet. Take a look at Dirshu footnote number 4. When we come Makam, nevertheless, Kasav L'Kaman, the Mishnah Berurah does write later on in Siman Reishai and Dalet, Shahamadaktikim, that those who are very, very careful with their performance of mitzvahs, Regilim Lirshaim B'Shabbos Im Hasakin, they at least make an impression on the challah with the knife, Kaidam HaBracha. So you're right. To do what the Mechaber described, what did the Mechaber describe? The Mechaber did not describe taking the knife, passing it over the challah, making the hamotzi, and then cutting the challah. What the Mechaber described to us, and what you're supposed to do during the week, is to take the knife and actually cut into the challah. How much do you cut in? You make a significant cut. You just be careful not to cut so deep into the challah that if you pick it up by the small end, the big end will fall off. But that allows you to make a pretty significant cut into the challah. That's what you're supposed to do during the week, and that's what the Ramah tells us over here we should not do on Shabbos, because we don't want to risk destroying the Lechem Mishnah. But in Siman Reishai and Dalid, what the Mishnah Berurah says is that the Medaktikim at least make a roshim with the knife. They make a scratch. They make a scratch on the challah before they go ahead and make the bracha. Now, why exactly do they go ahead and do that? What's the mile of doing that? It's not like you're really being memayit the hefsek by doing that. So I'm trying to, it slipped my mind. I found brought down a reason. Bear with me for 1 second. Let me see if I can quickly find it. Okay, I don't remember. I did find a reason why it's important to at least make a roshim on the challah, even on Shabbos and Yom Tov. I will try to research it again and find it again and report back to you. But for now, I forgot what the reason for that is. Okay, let's not let that hold us up. Let's go weiter over here. Okay, Mishnah Berurah Ois Kat Yud Aleph. So the Ramah said that on Shabbos we should not cut into the challah before the bracha, but in the words of the Ramah, im shachach, if you forgot v'chotach k'may b'choil, and you did cut into the challah the same way you would do it during the week, so the Ramah said einoi mazik. Ois Kat Yud Aleph, says the Mishnah Berurah, einoi mazik. Which the Lama, what the Ramah wants to say is shaloi hifsid al yedei zeh halechem Mishnah. Don't think that if you forgot and you did cut into the challah, now it's considered that you no longer have lechem mishnah. Shekol she'oiches baprusa, because as long as you could still pick up the small end where you made the cut, ushara kikar oil imai, and the rest of the loaf will come up with it and not break off, have it kishalem, it's still considered a shalem. So that's why the Ramah uses this funny terminology, umikam makim im shachach v'chatach k'may b'chayil einoi mazik. Mazik means to do damage. Ain't a mazik. You didn't do damage. What does it mean you didn't do damage? It explains to Chavetz Chaim, but it means that you didn't do damage. You didn't damage the challah. You didn't make the challah be no longer considered a shalem. That would be called damaging the challah. It was a shalem. You ruined it. It's not a shalem anymore. Says the Ramah, even on Shabbos, if you did cut into the challah, but you could still pick up the whole challah from the small end, ain't a mazik. You didn't damage the challah. It's still considered a shalem. You still have lechem mishnah. Okay. Now, let's go weiter in the Ramah. We're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines up from the bottom, a little bit before the middle of the line. Vinira. And it would seem, says the Ramah, Hadala yivtza yoiser mikabetza. This halacha that the Mechaber said, that when you cut off the piece for the hamotzi, you should not cut off a piece that's larger than a kabetza, larger than the volume of an egg. Hainu dafka b'choil. That halacha is only true during the week. Va'oichel levadoi. And by somebody who's eating alone. Avo b'Shabbos. But if you're eating on Shabbos, even if you're eating alone on Shabbos, or if even during the week, if you're eating with a lot of people, and you're being mוציא all of them in the Brachah HaMוציא, and now you have to give each one of them a piece, and now you need to give everybody from the piece that you cut off. You need to give each one of them a piece, and the piece that you're supposed to give them is supposed to be at least a kezayis, then mutar l'ftzayak k'fi mashet tzarich lo, then you're allowed to cut a piece as big as you need, and it's not considered that you're a glutton. It's not mechzi karav senusa, v'ayin l'kamon siman reish ayin dalet. So let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah, ice cut and yud beis. What did the Ramah just say? The Mechaber told us yesterday, you go and you make the Brachah HaMוציא. Now you're cutting off a piece of challah to eat. Said the Mechaber, don't cut off a small piece, then you look like a tzarayin. You look like a miser. Don't cut off a big fat piece, bigger than a kabetza, then you look like a glutton. Mechzi karav senusa. Make it a normal sized piece, somewhere between a kezayis and a kabetza. Says the Ramah, this halacha is only negeya during the week, and if you're eating alone. But if you're eating on Shabbos, even if you're eating alone, or if you're eating with a large group of people, even during the week, then you could cut a piece as large as you want. Why? Explains the Mishnah Berurah's cut yud beis. First of all, avo b'Shabbos, if you're eating on Shabbos, pirish, the b'Shabbos lo mechzi karav senusa. On Shabbos, there's no such thing as looking like a glutton. The mishum chibu of Suda Shabbos, because when it comes to the love of Suda Shabbos, hu oiseh laharbis b'Suda. If you see somebody cut off a nice big chunk of challah on Shabbos, you don't say he's a Rav Senusa. You don't say he's a glutton. You say, yeah, Einig Shabbos. He's having a Shabbos Suda. Ein anias b'makam ashirus. It's a Shabbos Suda. He wants to cut off a nice big chosh of a piece. So on Shabbos, it's okay. Ice cut yud gimel. Aisha eichel ritzayin loymer afilu b'chayil. Or if he's eating with a large group of people, even during the week, then he could also cut off a big piece. Now, for the next Mishnah Berurah is cutting your dalet. I have to point you back to the Ramah. You have to be medayik in the lashon of the Ramah. Take a look what the Ramah said. The Ramah said, go back into the Ramah, 4 lines from the bottom, right by the ice cut and yud gimel for the Mishnah Berurah. The Ramah said like this: Oisha oichelim harbe b'nei adam. If you're eating together with a large group of people, even during the week, and now here comes the key phrase, v'tzarich litein min haprusa, and you need to dole out from the prusa. What's the prusa? The prusa is the piece that you cut off. You had a big challah. You have 8 people sitting around your table. You made hamotzi, and you cut a piece off of the challah. Now the Ramah says you have an issue, because you need to give all of the assembled a piece from the piece that you cut off. You made the hamotzi, you cut off a piece. Now when you're going to give out for the hamotzi to each one of the 8 people around your table, you need to give it out from the piece that you cut off. And each one of those pieces is supposed to be a minimum of a kizayis. So if you have 8 people sitting around the table and yourself, that's 9 kizesim. So you want to give out 9 kizesim, and you want to give out 9 kizesim from the piece that you cut off. Well, then obviously the piece that you cut off is going to have to be larger than a kebeya. So that's why the Ramah says, if you're eating with a lot of people, even during the week, you could cut off a piece bigger than a kibetza. Because that piece that you cut off, you need to dole out from that piece, not from the piece that's left. From the piece that you cut off, you need to dole out 9 kizesim. 1 for you, and then 1 each for the other 8 people around your table. And therefore, it's not mechzi karav sinusa. You're doing what you need to do. But one thing you see very clear from this Ramah, at least the way the Mishnah Berurah is learning the Ramah, you see that when you give out the challah, you're supposed to give it out from the piece that you cut off, not from the piece that's left. So that would mean that on a normal, let's say you're having a Shabbos Suda, and your Lechem Mishnah is 2 large Hamish Achalas, and you have 6 people around your table, 7 people around your table. What you should do is you should make the hamotzi, cut off a piece that's big enough for you and for all the people around your table. So cut off a big piece, then cut off a piece from that big piece for yourself, and then cut off another piece for somebody, another piece for somebody, another piece for somebody, another piece for somebody. But what you should not do is make the hamotzi, cut off a piece, eat it, cut off another piece, eat it, give it to somebody else, cut off another piece, give it to somebody else, cut off another piece, give it to somebody else. That, it would seem, is not the proper way to do it. Now let's see it inside. So the Ramah says over here, and he's cutting Yud Gimel, he's cutting Yud Daled, min haprusa. What the Ramah said was, you need to give everybody a piece, min haprusa, from the piece that you cut off. Pirush, the explanation of this, says the Chavetz Chaim, is she'ikar mitzvah lechatchila, that the ikar mitzvah lechatchila, and he brings this down from the Achronim, doesn't say who, but ikar mitzvah lechatchila, the ikar mitzvah lechatchila is kishemoitzi acherim yidei chayvasan, when you're being moitzi other people with the Birchas hamoitzi, loses lechem me'aprusa, to give them challah from the piece shechotach. Let's read it again. Loses lechem me'aprusa shechotach, to give challah from the piece that you cut off, l'chol echad ve'echad mehem, to each one of them. V'loi min halechem hanishar, not from the challah that's left after you cut off a piece. So again, the Mishnah Berurah is being very meduyak over here. The Mishnah Berurah, coming off of the Ramah, he's saying very clearly, don't make the hamotzi, cut off a piece, eat it. So then, that was the prusa from the Brachah. You made the hamotzi and you cut off a piece. And what did you do with that piece? You ate it. So the piece for the Brachah is already gone. You ate it. The rest of the challah is hanishar. That's what's left over. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the ikar mitzvah over here, when you're being motzi other people, is that you make the Brachah, you cut off a piece for the Brachah, l'chvoid the Brachah, you cut off a piece, and you should give everybody from that piece. That means that piece has to be big enough to feed everybody. Now, let's say you have an extra large challah, and you have 12 people sitting around your table, and you're going to use the whole challah, or let's say you have 16 people sitting around your table, and you're going to use both challahs. Then there is no nishar. Then, pshat is, the prusas habracha, it would seem, is the entire challah. I'm making the bracha on the entire challah, and I'm doling out the entire challah. So there is no nishar. I'm doing the whole thing. I ran that by my Rebbe Reuben Feinstein, Zolzai Gesund Stark, and he was masking. But again, if you're not going to use the whole challah, cut off a piece the size that you need and dole out from that piece to each person. So they all get a piece from the Prusas HaBracha. So therefore, the Mishnah Berurah ends off here in Oiskot Yodalid, and he says, "V'tzarek lizar bazeh b'seuda gedola." Therefore, you have to take great care when you have a large suda, when you have a lot of people. Emechad motzi is kulam b'berchasai, where one person is being motzi everybody around the table with the berchas hamotzi. Sheyachtoich b'tzias hamotzi kol kach gedola, that you have to cut off a piece for the hamotzi that is big enough. That you have enough to dole out from that piece, a piece for hamotzi to each person. And you remember, you're supposed to give l'chalechad kizayis. You're supposed to try to give each person a kizayis, kidei shelo yeh nira kitzar ayin, so that you shouldn't look like a miserly person. We don't want you giving each person a little tiny piece of challah, then you look like a miser. We want you to give each person kedasu kedin. We want to give them a nice slice of challah. V'chanal b'soif hasif. U'b'darkei Moshe isik kizayis ha'pachas ma'at. In the Darkei Moshe on the Torah, the Ramah says that the piece that you give should be a kizayis or a little bit smaller. V'yesh oimrim, and there are those that say, oid, the balav haytaima. Even without this reason, gam kein toivu l'chadchila sheyochel ad kizayis be'ez berchas hamotzi. There are those that say, and we'll discuss this further on in greater detail, that right away by the hamotzi, a person should need a kizayis. Okay. See, nothing is simple. Not Natilas Yadayim, not Hamotzi, nothing is simple. Okay, Sif Beis. 3 lines to the bottom, middle of the line, says the Mechaber. Yevarech ha-moitzi lechem min ha'aretz. The proper nusach for the bracha is ha-moitzi lechem min ha'aretz, he who brought forth the bread from the ground, with a hay in the beginning of the word, ha-moitzi. V'im rabim misubim, says the Ramah, if you have a lot of people sitting around the table, and you're being moitzi them in the bracha, yechavnu libam, this is a very important halacha rabbi side that a lot of people are not nizarin. If there are a lot of people sitting around the table, and you're being moitzi them in the bracha, you have to instruct them. You have to get them used to. V'im rabim misubim, yechavnu libam, they should have attention, they should have kavana, l'shmaya bracha, to listen to the bracha, v'yanu amen, and to answer amen to the bracha. Let's pause here for a second, because what comes next is very fascinating. Let's pause here for a second. Let's go to the Mishnah Berurah, is cut to Zayin. The proper nusach for the bracha is ha-moitzi, behei koydem ha-mem, with the hay before the mem, v'imberach moitzi, if you drop the hay, and you say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam, moitzi lechem in ha'aretz, yotza, you are yotza. This happens to be a machlokes in Masechtas Brachas. What do we want the bracha to be? We want the bracha to be a bracha al ha'avar. We want the bracha to be past tense, because when you're eating the bread, it already came out of the ground. So we want to say, ha-moitzi lechem in ha'aretz, who already in the past brought the bread forth from the ground. There are those that want to suggest in the Gemara that if you drop the hay and you say, moitzi lechem in ha'aretz, that's mashma la'osid. That's mashma future tense, that he will bring the bread out of the ground. How do you say that bracha? I'm eating the bread now. But l'maisa, we say that even b'diavad, you're yotzi if you say moitzi, but l'chadchila you should say ha-moitzi. Ois kat yod zayin. V'im rabim misubim, if you have a lot of people sitting around the table, what the Mechaber wants to say is, im ha-misubim reitzim lotzeis beberchasai. If you have other people sitting around the table, and they want you to be moitzi them with the ha-moitzi, so then, ois kat yud ches yechavnu libam. They have to have kavanah to listen to the bracha, and to be yotze with the bracha. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Mishum dekevin the rights of lotzeis beberkas chaveroi, because since they want to be yotze with your bracha, tzarich litin daitoi lishmaya. They have to pay attention, and they have to have on their mind to listen and to hear the bracha. Va'oz havale kol teva sheshemea mipi hamavarech. If they listen with intent, then it becomes as if every word that they hear from the one who's reciting the bracha, ki'ilu amar ba'atzmai, it's as if he said it himself. Of course, this is the famous concept of shemea ka'oineh. Somebody who listens with kavana, it's as if he himself is actually saying the words that he's listening to, shemea ka'oineh, and that's how he could be yaitza with the bracha of somebody else. Ois katan yotes, v'yanu amen, and you should see to it to answer amen to the bracha. Says the Chavetz Chaim, dal yedei ha'aniyah, because through the answering of amen, and amen is saying emes. The word amen is, you're listening to the bracha, you heard the Mavarech say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam, hamotzi lechem min ha'aretz, you say amen, yes, it's true. You're ma'ames the bracha. So now you have 2 miles. Mila number 1 is you listened to every word of the bracha, so shemea ka'oineh, it's as if you said it yourself, and then you added an extra chizuk to it by being ma'amis it with your amen. You said amen, and by saying amen, you're saying, yeah, like you said. So you not only have shemea ka'oineh, you also have that verbal statement of amen, of an agreement. Yes, like just what you said. So you have 2 miles over here. So it says the Mishnah Berurah cut your test, through the answering of amen, shama ames hadavar, where you agree and you put your stempel, your agreement, on the bracha that the other person made, oz nechshav kilu hu mavarech ba'atzmai. Now, between that and shemea ka'oineh, it's as if you made your own bracha. Umikamakim b'di'eved, very important Mishnah Berurah. A lot of people don't know this. B'di'eved, Eina ma'akiv. B'di'eved, the amen is not ma'akiv. B'di'eved, if you listened to the hamotzi and you had kavana, so you have shemea ka'oineh, but you didn't say amen, you're still yaitz to the bracha. Kidl kabam b'sibin ratio gimel siv beis ayin sham. Of course, we shouldn't chas v'chalila drop the amen. But b'di'eved, you come with a shayla. I listened to the bracha with kavana to be yaitzi, but I didn't say amen. You're yaitz anyway, b'di'eved, without the amen. Now we come to a fascinating phrase over here in the Ramah. Two lines from the bottom, near the end of the line, right by the Ois Kat Chaf for the Mishnah Berurah, says the Ramah. The Mechaber told us that you make the bracha of ha-motzi. The Ramah said if there are a lot of people sitting around the table and they want you to be motzi them in the bracha of hamotzi, they should make sure to listen to your hamotzi, and they should make sure to answer amen. Now, says the Ramah, v'hamivarech yechavein la'amen sha'omrim. The mevarech should listen and have kavana to the amen of the shoymim, of the people who are listening to the bracha, to be yoitza. And he brings this down from the Arzaruah. Now you hear this? Until now, we kind of expected and understood everything that we heard. Yes, you want to be yoitza with somebody else's bracha. We understand. You need to listen to the bracha. You want to be yoitza with somebody else's bracha. We understand. You have to say amen. Now we have over here a Ramah that says, not only that, the one who's making the bracha, he makes the bracha. The people that are listening to be yotzes say amen. The one who said the bracha, who recited the bracha, should have kavana on the amen. He should listen to the amen, and he should have kavana to be yotze with the amen. And he brings this down from the Arzaruah. What's at work over here? Says the Mishnah Berurah Kat Chaf. V'hamavarich yichavein da'anias amen, because the answering of amen gam kein mechlal habracha. The amen becomes part of the bracha. You made a bracha, somebody heard it and said amen, like we said, he's putting the stempel on the bracha. He's giving a haskama to the bracha. He's saying, yes, it's true. that becomes part of the bracha. And since it's part of the bracha, the mevarech should listen to it and have in mind kinds to be yoytze the yamin. V'avagav the hu berach kvar ba'atzmai, the mevarech has to have kavanah to the amen. The mevarech said the bracha. Why does he have to have kavanah to the amen? Mikal makom al gidei she'oinin amen aleihem. Since people answered amen to the bracha, habracha chashuva yoyser. The amen elevates the bracha. And now that an amen was said, the mevarech has to have kavanah on the amen. Ulakach, and therefore, dacha lechatchila lekaven lotzeis panias amen she'oina ha'oina. And therefore, the mevarech should have in mind to hear the amen and to be yoytze with the amen. V'ayin biur halacha, and he sends us over here to the biur halacha. Now, the biur halacha, not going to go through the biur halacha here inside. It's biur halacha dibra maschil v'hamevarech yechaven. Now, the biur halacha over here, I want to pull up the lashon. The biur halacha basically tells us, this is brought, the Ramah is taking this from a Arzarua. And the Arzarua bases himself on a Yerushalmi. Now, it's a very interesting Yerushalmi. Let me see if I can find over here the lashon of the Yerushalmi. I had the Yerushalmi brought down here. Here it is. Here it is. We have over here a Yerushalmi. Rabbi Abba bar Zemina have a mishamish kame Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Abba bar Zemina was serving Rabbi Zera. Mazgi le kasa. He poured a kais of yayin for Rabbi Zera. Amalei sav brich. He said, take it and make the bracha. Amalei, he said to him, have daitach da'at mishti achrina. Have kavana that the bracha should go on another kais that you're going to drink later as well. Okay. Detani, because we learned, Hashamesh mevarech al kol kais v'kais. The one who's like serving at the Suda, normally you make a bracha on one kais, the bracha automatically covers every kais that you're going to have in the Suda. But the waiter is not kavua. The waiter is coming to the table, leaving the table, coming to the table, leaving the table. Therefore, he has to make a bracha on each kais, unless he has beferish das. Amalei, kama da'ano yohav daiti mafka yosech yidei chayvasech biberchasa, kain have daitach mifka yidei chayvasi ba'amen. So, you hear this? What Rabbi Abba bar Zemina said to Reb Zera was, I'm going to be mוציא you with the bracha. But the same way I have to have das to be mוציא you with the bracha, you should have das to be mוציא me with the amen. So from this Yerushalmi, we come with this idea that the amen becomes part of the bracha. And since the amen is part of the bracha, it's proper for the mevarech to be yoytze with the amen of the oine. Now, the biur halacha goes through this. He goes through the Yerushalmi. He goes through the Arzarua. The Chavetz Chaim is convinced that there's a mistake in the Girsa in the Yerushalmi, and that the Arzarua did not have the Yerushalmi properly. And in the end of the biur halacha, the Chavetz Chaim blibes a tzarich iyun on this halacha. But I will tell you a fascinating thing. I had a very, very, very chashuva uncle, my father, Oliver Shalom's brother. Many of you who are listening will be familiar with the name Rav Asher Weiss from Eretz Yisrael. Rav Asher Weiss Shlita. Rav Asher Weiss is my first cousin. So the uncle that I'm speaking about was Rav Asher's father. Now, just so you understand who we're talking about as well, you might be familiar with Rav Asher, but you're probably not familiar with Rav Asher's brother, Reb Berel. Reb Berel is the Friedrich Klausenberger Rebbe's Adam. He married the Friedrich Klausenberger Rebbe's daughter. Rebbe Yashiv, in a haskama to Rebbe Sefer, he called him Maran Sar HaTorah Shlita. And I have from somebody who heard it straight from Rebbe Yashiv said on Rebbe that there's nobody alive who knows Shas Be'iyun like Rebbe. Now you understand that when Rebbe Yashiv said that, obviously he was alive. Reb Chaim Kanievsky Zatzal was alive. A lot of Gedolim that are no longer alive were still alive when Rebbe Yashiv said on Rebbe that there's no one alive who knows Shas Be'iyun like Rebbe. So we're talking about very big people here. My uncle was Rav Asher and Rav Beryl's father. Now, my uncle, Reb Moshe, had a fascinating minhag. And that is that when he went to shul to daven Shachris, where if he was in a shul where the people knew him, there would be a line coming up to him when he came to Shachris. What was that line for? People were waiting online to say Birchas HaShachar to my uncle, so that my uncle could say Amen to their Birchas HaShachar. So in Eretz Yisrael, where my uncle lived, in the shul that he davened in, it was a sight to see, because he would come in by davening, everybody would line up by him, and they would all come, Umain, 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 and he would stand there for a half hour saying Amen to everybody's brachas. I remember when he came to the United States and he was davening in a shul where people didn't know him, so people were not coming over to him for him to say Amen. He went to everybody in the shul and he said, did you say brachas yet? And if somebody didn't say brachas yet, my uncle would say, no, mamshich. Go ahead, say brachas. And he would stand there, Umain. And then he would go to the next person. And he would ask everybody, did you say brachas yet? And anybody who we found who didn't say brachas yet, he would listen to say brachas and he would say Amen. Why? The answer is twofold. The answer in Nigla is here in Kuf Samach Zayin, is this Ramah and this Arzarua. The Arzarua is saying that the Amen is a chelik of the Brachah. Therefore, reasoned my uncle, and the big people are right about it, reasoned my uncle that the Brachah is missing something if it doesn't have an Amen. You make a Brachah to yourself and it doesn't have an Amen, epis felt, it's missing something. The Brachah is epis incomplete. Obviously, you're yoitza the Brachah, but there's still something lacking from the Brachah. My uncle didn't want that people's brachas should be lacking. So since it's a chelik in a bracha, he wanted to listen and say Amen, so the bracha should be a ganza bracha. But then there's also an answer in Nistar. The answer in Nistar is from the Ari HaKadosh. The Ari HaKadosh says that a person, we all know that there's a hakpada to make meya brachas b'chol yom. You should recite 100 brachas every day. The Ari HaKadosh said that there's also a hakpada to have tzaddik amens, 90 amens every day. It's based on the pasuk, it just escaped me. I'm not sure if it's tzaddik be'emunasa yichya, maybe tzaddik be'emunasa yichya. So tzaddik be'emunasa, amen. So you should have tzaddik amens b'chol yom, and it seems that the Ari HaKadosh wrote that really the 90 amens are supposed to be before you daven Shachris. And my uncle was very, very makpid to get 90 amens before he daven Shachris. And that's why he would go around the shul and collect amens from Birchas HaShachar before he would go daven Shachris. Okay. So now, let's just finish off Sif Beis, and we're going to have to stop over there. Let's finish off Sif Beis. The last phrase on Sif Beis, the bottom line here in Samach Beis, Amid Beis, by the Oiskot L'Chav for the Mishnah Berurah, says the Mechaber, Yitein Revach bein lechem uvein min. When we say motzie lechem min haaretz, we should create a tiny bit of a pause between the word lechem and the word min. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you should have a small pause so that you shouldn't swallow one of the mems. Very simple. Hamotzi leche min haaretz. Now I got away with one mem. What I did was lamid ches mem yud nun leche min. Hamotzi leche min haaretz. So you lost out on a mem. We don't want to lose out on any letter. Every letter is precious. So it's hamotzi lechem min haaretz. And the same thing holds true any other time that you have the end of one word is the same letter as the beginning of the next word in a bracha. And the truth is that we learned a lot about this in Hilchos Kriyas Shema. We have this in Kriyas Shema. Va'avadtem mehera. It shouldn't be va'avadte mehera. No, then you skip the mem. It's va'avadtem mehera. So we have this in many places, not only in Hilchos Brachas. Okay, we're going to stop over here. Next time we'll pick up with Sif Gimel. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The source of limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Baruch Shem should send Yeshua's refuahs parnasos should do to all those in need. Achenu kol beis Yisrael hanesunim batzara ubashivya haimdim bein bayam ubein bayabasha hamaka mirachem aleim v'yitziam mitzara l'rvacha me'afela la'ora u'mishiba l'gula hashta b'agala uzman kariv and Amar Amen. Be well.